The traditional start of the Middle Ages is from AD 1 to the fall of the Roman Empire in AD 475. Despite the difficulties of life in the early years of the Middle Ages, medieval people managed to meet their basic need for self-expression through art. To cope with the difficult times, people turned to the Church. The growing popularity of Christianity helped the Roman Catholic Church become the most powerful unifying force in Europe during the Middle Ages. The high period of the Middle Ages occurred during the reign of Charlemagne, a powerful king from Gaul. He was able to unite most of the small warring kingdoms of Europe under his rule, which was sanctified by the Catholic Church. This meant that Europe could spend more money on developing its resources and trade than on wars, more on building than on destruction, more on education than on defense. As living conditions improved under Charlemagne, a revival of the arts and education began to take place. More people learned to read, and with that came the spread of ideas, even though books were still copied by hand. Almost all of these great achievements centered around the Church and reflected its enormous influence. By the close of the Middle Ages in 1450, some areas of Europe were waging destructive wars. Others, having gained both wealth and leisure time from successful trading ventures, were busy evaluating the role of the Church and becoming interested in other intellectual pursuits. Out of the activities grew the Renaissance. To understand the Middle Ages, we must understand Christianity. To understand Christianity, we ought to consider its very beginnings. Christianity grew out of the decaying soil of classical civilization. Medieval man didn't seem to be proud of his body. For the Christians, the body became merely a prison of the soul. The Christians rejected the human body as pagan and thus worldly. Christ was a religious symbol, not a three-dimensional human being. When Emperor Constantine accepted Christianity as the state religion of the Roman Empire in the early 4th century AD, there were no Christian churches, and pagan religious monuments were mostly unacceptable. They included the open forecourt and the rain basin, now a baptismal font, in these first churches. Most early Christian churches were extremely plain structures with simple, uninterrupted enclosing walls. Inside, 2 rows of columns run the length of the building. The center of the long hall is called the nave, from the Latin word meaning ship. The nave was considered the ship which transported the worshipper to the altar at the far end, and by implication to heaven. Christianity focused its eyes inwards upon the soul. In the 4th century, Emperor Constantine had moved the center of the government and the church from Rome to Byzantium, whose name he changed to Constantinople. Although the exterior of the Byzantine-style church is as unadorned as the early Christian basilica in the West, the interior is filled with intricate designs. The richly decorative mosaics and sculpture of a formal courtly style sparkle everywhere. Religious themes were not the only subjects rendered by Byzantine artists. Medieval artists in Europe turned to many sources for inspiration.